You know that feeling when you're alone in your house and you hear something that shouldn't be there? Not a burglar or a branch against the window. Something smaller, more intimate. Like someone breathing just slightly out of sync with you. I've been a radio technician for 15 years. I know every hiss, every pop, every frequency bleed that can crawl through the airwaves. Static is my language. White noise is my lullaby. But what I started hearing 3 months ago, that was something else entirely. It began with a night shift at WKRP-FM, our local classic rock station. Dead air is a cardinal sin in radio, so we keep the automated playlist running even when no one's in the booth. I was doing routine maintenance on the transmitter when I first heard it. A sound that lived in the spaces between songs. Not static, not interference. Something that felt like listening. The first time I thought it was feedback from the headphones, a whisper-thin thread of sound that seemed to weave through the bass line of Hotel California. But when I isolated the audio track, ran it through every filter I knew, there was nothing there. Nothing measurable. Nothing I could point to and say, "There, that's what I heard." But I kept hearing it. Every night, between 2 and 4 a.m., when the world was at its quietest and the radio waves had room to breathe, that sound would creep in. Not words exactly, more like the shape of words, the shadow of conversation happening just beyond the edge of perception. I started keeping a journal. Technical notes, mostly. Frequency readings, amplitude measurements, anything that might explain what I was experiencing. But the numbers never told the story. They never captured the way the sound made my skin crawl, or how it seemed to respond when I moved around the studio. Week 3 was when I realized it wasn't coming through the equipment. I was alone in the station, running diagnostics on the backup transmitter, when the main board started acting up. The playlist skipped. Not unusual. But the skip created a gap of pure silence. 3 seconds of nothing. And in that nothing, I heard it clearly. Not through the speakers, not through my headphones. The sound was in the room with me. It was like hearing someone else's thoughts, fragmented pieces of conversation that almost made sense, spoken in a voice that was almost familiar, almost mine, but not quite, like an echo that arrived before the original sound. I called in sick the next day. Spent the afternoon researching everything I could about audio hallucinations, electromagnetic interference, anything that might explain what was happening. But the more I read, the more I realized that what I was experiencing didn't fit any pattern. Hallucinations are usually random, chaotic. This had structure, purpose. It was trying to tell me something. The breakthrough came when I stopped trying to record it. Instead, I started listening, really listening. Not with my equipment, but with that part of your brain that picks up on things before you're consciously aware of them. The part that makes you turn around when someone's watching you. The voice, and I had to admit it was a voice now, was reading something. Not random words, but something specific. Something that sounded like coordinates? No, not coordinates. Addresses, street names, numbers. I recognized one of them. 1247 Maple Street. That was my address. The next night I brought a pad and pencil instead of recording equipment. Sat in the studio with the lights off. Just me and the gentle hum of the transmitter. Waited. At 2:17 a.m., it started. The voice was clearer now, like it had been waiting for me to stop trying to capture it and just accept it. It read addresses in a steady mechanical cadence. 1247 Maple Street, 892 Oak Avenue, 1556 Pine Lane. All addresses in my neighborhood. All houses I passed on my way to work. But it wasn't just reading them. It was cataloging them. Like taking inventory. 1247 Maple Street. 2 occupants. Male 34, female 31. Sleep patterns consistent. Security minimal. My blood turned to ice water. The voice was describing my house, my schedule, my life. I should have left then. Should have walked out of that studio and never looked back. But I couldn't. Because the voice wasn't done, and I had to know what it was building toward. Over the next week, I filled 3 notebooks with what I heard. Addresses, yes, but also details. Personal things, private things. Things that no one should know about the people living in those houses. Mrs. Chen at 892 Oak Avenue kept her spare key under the 3rd flower pot. The Johnsons at 1556 Pine Lane had a dog that barked exactly twice every night at 11:30 p.m. The young couple at 1203 Elm Street argued every Tuesday about money. Always in the kitchen. Always after she got home from her second job. The voice knew everything. And it was sharing this information with someone. I started staying late after my shifts, listening, waiting for the other half of the conversation. Because that's what this was. I was only hearing one side of a dialogue. The voice would pause sometimes, as if listening to a response I couldn't hear. It would acknowledge things, confirm details, answer questions I couldn't perceive. Yes, the back door is always unlocked after midnight. No, they don't have an alarm system. Tuesday is the only night she works late. I tried to warn people. Knocked on doors, made phone calls, sent anonymous tips to the police, but what could I say? That I was hearing voices through the radio, telling me personal details about my neighbors, that some invisible entity was conducting surveillance on an entire neighborhood. They thought I was having a breakdown. Maybe I was. Maybe I still am. But then the break-ins started. Nothing dramatic, nothing that made the news, just a series of small thefts, minor violations. Mrs. Chen's spare key went missing. The Johnsons' dog stopped barking at 11:30. They found it dead in the backyard 3 days later. No signs of violence. No explanation. Just gone. The young couple at 1203 Elm Street came home from grocery shopping to find their front door wide open. Nothing stolen, nothing disturbed, just open. Like someone had been inside, looking around, and forgotten to close it on their way out. I stopped sleeping, stopped eating regular meals. Spent my days researching, my nights listening. The voice was getting stronger, more confident. It had moved beyond simple surveillance to something that felt like preparation. Then it started talking about me. Not about 1247 Maple Street. About me specifically. About Thomas Brennan, night shift radio technician, divorced, no kids. Sister in Portland he calls every Sunday at 2 p.m. about my habit of leaving the kitchen window cracked open because I like the sound of rain, about the way I always check the locks twice before bed, but never think to check the basement door, about how I've been listening to conversations I was never meant to hear. That's when I understood. The voice wasn't just conducting surveillance, it was building profiles, creating a catalog of vulnerabilities, routines, weaknesses. And I had stumbled into its operation by accident. Worse, I had become part of it. Because the voice wasn't just talking to someone else anymore. Sometimes, in the long pauses between addresses, I could swear I heard myself responding. Not my voice exactly, but something wearing my voice. Something that knew my speech patterns, my vocabulary, my way of thinking, something that was learning to be me. Last night was the worst. I was in the studio, notebook ready, when the voice started its usual routine. But instead of addresses, it began with a question. Are you ready to begin phase 2? And something answered. Something that sounded exactly like me, but speaking words I never said. Yes, I understand the parameters, full integration by the end of the month. Excellent. The host has been very cooperative. The transition should be seamless. What about the others, the neighbors? They trust him. They've seen him around for months. When the time comes, they won't suspect anything. I tried to speak, to interrupt, to scream, but I couldn't. I was frozen, listening to something else plan my life while wearing my voice. And Thomas? Thomas served his purpose. He won't be needed after the transition. That's when I ran. Left the studio, left my car, just ran through the empty streets until I couldn't breathe. Sat on a bench in the park until sunrise, trying to process what I'd heard. I'm writing this now from the public library. I can't go home. I can't go back to work. Because I'm starting to understand what's happening. And it's worse than I thought. The voice isn't just cataloging information. It's building something, creating a network of replacements. People who look like us, sound like us, know everything about our lives. Perfect copies that can slip into our routines without anyone noticing. And I helped them. Every night I listened, every detail I wrote down. I was helping them prepare, teaching them how to be us. I don't know how long I have, maybe hours, maybe days, but I can feel it already. Moments where I can't remember what I was thinking. Times when my own voice sounds strange to me, like something else is testing it out, seeing how it fits. The worst part is that sometimes, when I'm not paying attention, I catch myself humming. Not a song I know, not a melody I recognize. Just a sound that lives in the spaces between thoughts. A sound that feels like listening. If you're reading this, if you recognize any of these addresses, if you've been hearing strange sounds in your house at night, don't investigate, don't listen, don't try to understand. Some things are better left unknown. Some conversations are never meant to be heard. And some voices are never meant to be answered. The sound is getting closer now. I can hear it even here, in the bright safety of the library. It's not coming through the speakers or the computers. It's coming from inside my own head, growing stronger with each passing hour. Soon, I think it will be the only voice I can hear. And then, I think it will be the only voice I have.
Found typed on a public computer at the Portland Public Library, along with 3 notebooks filled with addresses and personal details about residents of the Riverside neighborhood. The author, Thomas Brennan, has not been seen since Tuesday. However, his neighbors report that he seems to be doing well. They've seen him around the neighborhood, going about his usual routine. He waves and smiles when they see him, just like always. Maybe a little too much like